Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's Wednesday night in Israel, and I'm about to invite a good friend of ours, Rabbi Kamenetz, to join me in conversation. We are talking about all things Jewish, psychedelics, and about his organization. We'll give Zach a moment or two to join. So welcome. Lovely to see you here. I've been in Israel for about a month now. Life is radically different. Hello, Zach. Hey.
Hey, my brother.
I've lost my head.
It's good sometimes.
Oopsie daisy. Sorry about that. Yeah, I've had to find a way to balance my phone against my laptop and my cup of tea. Rather precarious. Yeah, lovely to see
We're
you, Zach.
finding our way to each other. Hey, my friend. Good evening.
Yeah.
You're
Hey.
you're you're so much closer to Sukkot than I am.
Yeah, I'm kind of sitting in. It feels like a sukkah, but it's like a pagoda, I think it's called, with grapevines. But yeah, I'm in Israel, been here a month, and it's very different to Teaneck, New Jersey, to be honest. It really, life feels different. It feels like I don't want to use the word reborn because it's got some connotations. But yeah, life feels different like it never has before. And I'm kind of just learning to walk and talk, and well, my Hebrew is terrible, but yeah, I'm just learning to breathe and to connect with the land. And it's really filling me up with new energy that I have not experienced ever before.
Well, I'm wishing you all the best. I have only recommendations for places to buy very good bread um, and spices. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about your family's journey, especially your little ones.
Yeah. Yes. Just as anecdotally, my son went on his first kind of hike today with B'nai Akiva.
Mm.
So it was rather nerve-wracking, just
A youth
his,
group,
yeah,
Jewish youth group. Yeah.
yeah, his phone died. And so we were like, is he okay? What's going on? And yeah, kids are more independent and free here. Like he goes walking to the park with his mates. We would never do that in
Mm.
America. It's just, yeah. And I just davened Ne'ilah during Yom Kippur on the street, and there were kids on bicycles and people in motorbikes just pulling up and just joining the service as the sun was setting. It was totally different to anything I've ever experienced.
Well, let me know how it feels when you set up a bank account.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a harrowing ego death experience, I think, is what we call it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't want to just spiritually bypass that everything's just amazing over here. It's definitely very challenging with lots of things, but we haven't met yet, Zach. It feels like we have,
Mm.
but we haven't. If we haven't hugged, we haven't really connected physically, but yeah, we've shared a nice connection over the years as, I think the Jewish psychedelic world has gathered loads of momentum, and you've always been someone over the last few years really speaking your truth and not pretending to be anything other than who you are. So I love who you are, and I love that you're with us, and I love that you're teaching with us. So I
Yeah.
want to start just by thanking you for being who you are, and for on behalf of Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, and all human beings that are alive right now. Thank you for speaking and being your truth.
It's really kind, David, and thank you for having me here. And I mean, just watching your evolution and development as well. We met when you were not with psychedelics today. You were eager to be moving into the psychedelic world, and you also told me that you had a wish to move your family to Israel. So these things are developing and unfolding right before our eyes, and here we are.
Yeah, yeah. And when we spoke, I was a director of an outpatient addiction center,
Mhm.
and it was like, what? I could work in psychedelics, but it's amazing how things have evolved. And how long has Shefa been happening? Like when did the vision for Shefa start? Let's just jump into it. So
When did
what
the
is
vision?
what is Shefa,
Yeah,
and when did you first think about this thing?
great. Well, Shefa is a fiscally sponsored organization that is dedicated to Jewish psychedelic support. And we can talk about what Jewish psychedelic support means in our context. But the idea for Shefa, which means flow or abundance, divine flow, divine energy, um, it started in 2017 when I was a exited out of a research study by a prominent university, and that study will be actually published hopefully very soon. And I came out of that study having had my first two major experiences with psilocybin. I was psychedelically naive before that. That's how I actually got into the study. And when I came out, even though I was well prepared by a staff who have been doing this kind of work thousands of times over, and even though I was in a setting that was there to be maximally supportive of my inner experience, what I was looking for when I got out were resources for my own integration, for making meaning of these very different, very profound, life-altering experiences that were actually in the language of my own tradition. And, and those resources were not readily available. So I had to do my own integration work and finding like what are the practices which could support the unfolding or could help me understand what those visions, those intuitions, those images actually meant, but grounded in my own myth, grounded in my own archetypal imagery, grounded in my own desire for, for me, serving the divine. And so what I ended up doing was being my own integration therapist or counselor, or pastoral chaplain. And when I started speaking about this need for my tradition, our tradition, other traditions to kind of step it up, like if this thing is going to be happening in the next X amount of years, our traditions kind of need to update the software in order to be ready and present for people who are having profound experiences with psychedelics or otherwise. And I started speaking about this, and I got a huge wave of response. Like, thank you. This is what I have been waiting for. This is what I've needed. And that's when I birthed this idea of Shefa, just to have a space in the psychedelic renaissance, as it were, for Jewish people to explore their own traditions while they're exploring the innermost depths of their consciousness.
Beautiful. And I feel like we should talk about the course that we're collaborating on, and that's one of the reasons why we wanted to set this up, just to tell folks we've got a course starting just after Simchat Torah. It starts October the 10th. The course is based around our Navigating Psychedelics, our bestseller, the 9-week course. We're taking all of the content pre-recorded from that and then building a 9-week live course around Jewish informed perspectives on psychedelics. And me plus 7 wonderful teachers, and Zach is going to be teaching week 3. It's going to be, what time is it going to be? I think it's 12 o'clock Eastern time. So 7 o'clock at Israel, 9 a.m. Pacific. And your class is around Jewish phenomenology of psychedelics. So what is phenomenology? And I have to say it very slowly so I can say it properly. Yeah, what does that mean? And like, how would one experience phenomenology and phenomenological changes, challenges, or experiences when using psychedelics as a Jewish person or as a non-Jewish person?
Absolutely. So when I think of phenomenology, I'm really thinking about the subjective experiences that are occurring within one's mind, body, spirit. It's an approach that actually thinks about our consciousness and what kind of material is encountered when we are having either, a spiritual experience, a experience with expanded consciousness, experience with effervescence, and that's basically the objects of our direct experience, just to put it plainly. An approach to Jewish phenomenology with regards to psychedelic work, I'm actually going to be presenting some what I would call case examples. As the organization that's dedicated to Jewish psychedelic support, we get numerous calls from Jews all over the world who are using psychedelics, and they are encountering archetypal imagery, things that they are experiencing directly inside of their mind bodies from the Torah, from Jewish tales, Jewish myth, Jewish mythical content. And they feel as though they are themselves, they are being redeemed from Egypt in this moment. They are embodying what it means to be a free person. Or on the other end, people are experiencing historical or ancestral material. For example, being trapped, God forbid, in a concentration camp and feeling the depth of what it means to be a prisoner. In the Nazi genocide, right? All of those things happening inside while psychedelic experience is happening. And then what does one do with that? How does one process that? How does that make meaning? How does that create healing? So we have worked with numerous people about practices, about ways of being where that kind of phenomenon could actually ultimately be for growth and development.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you, Zach. And I muted myself because there was one of the street cats was walking by. Could everyone hear the cat?
Absolutely.
Are you So in Israel, there's just, we've got like 10 cats that just hang out in our garden. So sorry about that. But
it's part of it.
Yeah, it comes with the territory, literally. I wanted to, I think, ask some questions around the services that you provide, or that need for services, that need for a place to go to have these conversations, and how on one level I think we're talking about the average psychonaut, the person that either is having an experience or about to have it, or it had something came up, but it can also be for a practitioner who's working with a Jewish client, and that we're trying to design this course that we're working on for both, and as well just for non-Jewish people who are interested in kind of Jewish spirituality, psychedelic experiences, and working with the Jewish community. So, and I think it's really important that we're developing these cultural competence courses for as many cultures, traditions, people's kind of demographics, populations, identities that there are in this kind of rainbow experience of being human beings. So all religions, all peoples, all minority groups. And I think just I personally feel quite reluctant at times just to say, as a Jew, we need this. It's like I don't want to, get attention and say, oh, what, you don't need that. You're just a normal guy. But I think there's something really intimate and at times quite scary around the experiences of being a Jew, and of being out as a Jew, and some of the complexity of owning our identity, and do I want to be this way for whatever reason. And it's a beautiful dance to do, but we need someone sometimes to dance with, or at least to be held, and to know that someone is there should we need them to be there. So like how are you kind of framing these dances, and who is welcome to dance in this kind of in this way?
Well, everyone is always welcome to dance. Everyone is always able to join the circle. I think what you're saying is really profound and potentially hard for people to hear, that we could, as Jews, have Jewish needs that we sometimes either have to ask other Jews to be able to meet, or even our non-Jewish siblings to be able to meet or hold space for. And that happens so commonly in psychedelic space that those are some of the most distressing calls that we get, is either there's a Jewish person who has come out of a psychedelic experience that's with a therapist or with a guide, or even in research, let alone going to South America and sitting with ayahuasca, where there is a need that someone didn't even know that they needed until they're coming out of it, where there was something that was said, or there was some kind of music, or even a description of reality that they felt obligated that they have to go along with, that in some way did not comport rightly with their Jewishness, whether they were conscious of it at the time or not. And so often what happens is we're doing a little bit of tending to some exposed roots. People come out of psychedelic space and they say, like, My Jewishness, I didn't even know, was not well held. What do I do now? And so we got to put we put the roots right into the ground. We give them water, we give them care, and we let people know that they're okay. And now that there's a need that they know that they need, then let's explore that further and try to bring nutrients to that system. On the other hand, there are other people who know something about their Jewishness before going into psychedelic space in the preparation phase. And they say, I want to make sure that there is ancestral music that I can connect with when I go in. I want to make sure that there are aspects of ritual design in an altar or some imagery or some material aspect of a psychedelic space that my Jewishness is going to be present and I can connect with at the time. So we also then prepare people for that. In American Judaism, what people don't often understand from the outside and even from the inside is that we're also working with a long-standing literacy issue that some people, most Jewish people, don't often have the facility of their own tradition well enough to say, I want to have this book or teaching. Oh, I want to have this ritual item. But they often observe kind of the ease or facility in other traditions to say like, oh, people have such pride around their pipes or their whistles or their God. And maybe that's a live option for me too. So, it's a delicate dance between, something like that's an injury that we have to address, but also that there's an invitation from other traditions where we say, oh, I actually feel okay now being Jewish in this way that I didn't know before. So beautiful, so complex, so exciting.
Yeah, and there's a few things I'd like to discuss from there. Let's see where we can get to.
Yeah, please.
So there's one piece I'm thinking around some of the research trials and some of the, what we think about set and setting that's somewhat neutral and, objectively, yes, evidence-based, like a Buddha statue, or having some kind of music playing that's, Eastern or Wagner classical music that in a sense might seem value neutral. But it's really interesting to think about nothing is really value neutral. And so when we're designing set and setting, and when we're coming in with our own set, like in our own mind space,
sure,
of, how am I going to hold space for this person? Or what kind of space am I creating for myself prior to my psychedelic journey? Yeah, that I need to really be mindful of who I am or who this other person is. And yeah, that a Buddha statue might not necessarily be value neutral or objective, and some Jewish people might not be comfortable with that. And I was at the New Shama clinic in Manhattan before I left America, and they're working with ketamine with a lot of the ultra-Orthodox Jews from Brooklyn, from Borough Park, and quite often they need a translator in Yiddish, and working with super Orthodox Jewish people with really bad depression, PTSD, who literally have never gotten out of Borough Park, that only speak Yiddish, and they're having ketamine therapy, and they're having these amazing experiences, like Tati, like experiencing God in a ketamine clinic in Manhattan without being able to speak English. And they've designed their clinic in Manhattan so that they're welcome, so that the rooms really are welcome to all human beings. And the music that they play also is kosher music, so there's no kol isha, there's not kind of female vocalists singing. And whether or not I personally feel comfortable with kol isha isn't part of the conversation, but they're welcome, so that they are able to join that ketamine clinic now, that's amazing.
Sure. I think what you're describing is really well addressed in a paper that was put out by the Emory Center for Psychedelics and Spirituality, and I think the lead on that paper was Roman Politsky, where he talks about being aware of the importance of SERT factors, SERT, spiritual, existential, religious, and theological factors in psychedelic assisted therapy. And essentially what one of the main theses of this paper, which I want to urge people to read, and maybe we can get the link in the description later, is that the priority of psychedelic space should be what the care seeker needs, not what the caregiver thinks is best for the patient, or the care seeker rather. That means with regard to music, with regard to imagery in the space, with regard to suggestions for preparation and integration. This needs to be kind of worked with chaplains or even like religious leaders, even community members where this person finds themselves before and after, so that the outcomes are optimized, to use kind of like a rough term. So that would mean, of course, like thinking about the Buddhist statue. Think about the Buddhist statue in the psychedelic space for an Orthodox Jew, right? That already is going to offend some sensibility where the kind of trust that you would hope between the care seeker and the caregiver, there's already a fracture there, right? That's already just one tangible example. But what about something about the assumptions about human nature or about the human spirit, about what is a way of working with resistance? So for example, let's say that a care seeker has a very hard time with their daily spiritual practice. And one of those spiritual practices is putting on those black straps and black boxes onto their body called tefillin every day. So you might, from a particular perspective, a care seeker might say, wow, this person's really having a hard time accepting that their inner life has changed and they're struggling and they're trying to make something still work, when maybe that person really needs to just accept that it's no longer working for them. But that completely misses this idea of obligation, right? That this is a very strong spiritual practice, a spiritual discipline, working with the obligated self to say, no, I need to be doing this. I need to be performing my obligation. And I can't just accept it and say, okay, I'm putting this down. Instead of working with that resistance, someone is encouraging the acceptance. Right? That has come up time and time again. So we want to maximize the outcomes by being really aware of the internal state and internal needs of the care seeker. And that's then about becoming curious about one's process, and being open to what that person needs versus me thinking I know what the care seeker needs most.
Yeah, and these are really kind of fundamental skills, foundational skills for a space holder, is to be able to do that, not to kind of project on and overinterpret and overlead, in a sense, that inner directed healer of your client, whether they're Jewish or queer or BIPOC or Christian, whatever that might be. Like, let them find that inner healing intelligence find its wisdom, speak its truth, do its healing. And it might be I become more religious as a Jew, or it might be actually I don't want to be so I don't want to be so religious, or I'm not quite so sure, or I want to be religious and I want to be queer. Can I do both? How do I do that? And that's obviously where integration and support comes into it. It's not automatically like, and that's part of what I worry about, Zach, is just talking about Jewish stuff. It's like, I'm not trying to make you more religious. I don't want you to, put one of these on your head and keep kosher. And like, I want you to get into this complex wrestling match with yourself, with God, with your soul, with your ancestors, and with love and tenderness. Yeah, just believe that process is part of your destiny, and just to keep going until I don't know when.
Well, that's that kind of attuned awareness from the care seeker and the caregiver feels fundamental, regardless if we're working with Jewish people or otherwise, like you said. I think that one challenge, and I know that this will probably come up in other sessions during this series, is, it's not only to be Jewishly informed and what that means in so many complex, contradictory, paradoxical ways, but that also is about trying to begin to understand the nature of Jewish trauma, which is diverse, which is hidden and included in a lot of ways, right? This is also a conversation that the Jewish communities are only starting to have in a grounded way that is vectoring toward healing, and not just like, yep, there's the wound, there it is, let's revisit it, okay, let's move on. So if we can become aware of Jewish diversity of practice or non-practice, the diversity of wounds that exist in different ethnic traditions, and the wounding from religion itself, and not just wounds from the outside, I think that will kind of bolster, again, those outcomes, but also Jewish people's comfort with entering into these spaces that, like you said, are not always value neutral.
Yeah, and you mentioned the T word there, and I feel like it's synonymous with being a Jew, and kind of accepting the life of a Jew, and also doing some deep inner work as well. I'm not saying every Jew has it or every human being has it, but yeah, for me personally, the more Jewish I became, and despite my best attempts to run away from it, and I've been literally realizing lately I was trying to kill the Jew inside of me, literally as a teenager, and it's a strong word. Most of my family were murdered in the Holocaust, so I don't use that word lightly, but I personally internalized, I didn't want to be a Jew, so I tried to kill that part of me just to be an English young man and play rugby and get drunk and, be an economist, and that's who I was until, my life changed. And because I think I didn't want to deal with the trauma and the pain of just, what happened in the Holocaust and beyond that, just feeling like a minority. And I can pass as a white guy, but there was a bit of me, and I thank God now I don't want to just pass as a white guy, as an Englishman. Like, I just want to be a Jew, and I'm still learning how to kind of be that. But the trauma is there, and in my psychedelic experiences, it's kind of always there. And a bit of me, Zach, has honestly come to some conclusion that I'll never be healed. I don't know how to heal this. And so part of my healing experience has been like, I can't heal it. Like, there's no way to heal what history has done and what is inside of me. And I don't know, that's me and my own personal healing journey, but there's something there, I think, that can be overwhelming about accepting our identity, all of the baggage, the pain, the complexity of what it brings. But that's why, if we can have safe spaces and safe people to say, hey, can I just air my crazy stuff with you, my complex stuff with you, my stuff I'm worried about, uncertain about, and that's why, we speak about anti-racist trainings and anti-racist practitioners and queer-friendly practitioners. And I really feel like I want Jew-friendly practitioners, or people that just like, yeah, I get it. Like, you can bring that into this space, and I'll meet you there. And I don't know what words to use for that, but I really feel like that's part of what we're trying to build here.
Well, first of all, David, before we just like keep going on, like this is just like talking head conversation and trying to promote a course, I just want to be able to connect with you as a person and everything that you just shared. First, to honor the ancestors that you brought into the conversation, and all of those lives lost, and the innumerable worlds lost, the worlds upon worlds that were lost, and your very real experience of having that filter into you as a young person, and the desire to push yourself away, push aspects of yourself away, and to disappear in that way. Can't even imagine. And then multiply that by however many living Jewish people who are carrying that around and are not even aware of it. So you represent, David, like someone who made an active turn away from disappearing. And I want to honor that. It's so courageous. And I'm also really curious, David, like what inspired that turn again toward yourself, to know yourself instead of forget yourself?
Yeah, thanks for letting me just take some moments to breathe into that, and I really appreciate you, acknowledging and honoring ancestors and the pain and the healing. yeah, it's a long story about how how I've evolved. You know, I was a Buddhist for 8 years.
Mm,
After I got electrocuted when I was 21, I became Buddhist
mm,
and vegetarian, and I quit being an economist and became basically a social worker and counselor. But I rejected my Judaism even more
mm.
because of that, because I just took this identity. I'll just be this spiritual hippie Buddhist vegetarian guy, and that's going to be who I really am. And it helped me, and I did some good
Yeah,
healing. But then when I got into my late 20s, this voice came up inside me, and I started learning a bit of Torah and Chassidut, the Tanya. And my rabbi was a woman, and she was a lesbian, socialist, communist, and that's what I needed at the time. It was like that really, like, okay, I trust you.
yeah,
Help me be a
yeah.
Jew.
Wow.
And then, I just literally started to feel something inside of me. And my rabbi that taught me my bar mitzvah died, and I went to his
Mm,
funeral in Birmingham. And then a friend of mine got married who was a Jewish woman in Israel. And I was like, huh, I think I might want to marry a Jew, but I'm engaged to a non-Jewish woman.
mm,
And this doesn't make sense. And then, and then one thing led to another. I broke up from my fiance, and about 6 months later, I had my first ever proper Shabbat. Like, I'd never done Shabbat. I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know there was like two books, a Siddur and a Chumash. I knew nothing. I was in New Zealand in the mountains, and some Israelis picked me up in their car. I was hitchhiking. I was a mountain ranger. And they said, "What are you doing for Shabbat?" I was like, "Oh, when's that?" "Oh, tonight." I was like, "Oh, yeah, nothing really."
wow.
So they came and stayed with me, and I had my first Shabbat. And literally on the Shabbat Saturday afternoon, after we had some lunch and we baked challah together, we had a nap. It's like, "Oh yeah, we're going to take a nap now." What, on a Saturday afternoon? It's like, yeah, it's like kind of tradition. I was like, all right, okay. And so we just all fell asleep in the living room. And then literally when I woke up, I felt different. I saw things differently. I felt, and something inside of me was alive. And I like it, like something inside connected with something outside of me to become one. And literally that day I was like, oh God, I've got to make Aliyah and move to Israel. And so I did. And that was 15 years ago. And I stayed for 2 years and then ended up going back to England and America. And now a month ago, I've made Aliyah a second time. But there was a lot of self-hatred, to be honest, that I had to deal with from many different levels, and just to be who I am. But I realized I just can't run away from me. And I'm also a bisexual man, and part of my running away was from that, and just trying to understand what that means as a
Well, again,
45-year-old man with kids married to a beautiful woman who's heterosexual in a wonderful relationship. Just the complexity and nuances of each of our individual journeys. God, it takes a long time to really just start to unpeel some of those basic layers of who we really are.
well, I want to also, honor not only the loss and all of the pain and the trauma as it's carried through the generations, but also the choices that you had to make in that moment to protect yourself, right? I also don't want to, I don't want to say like, turning toward Judaism, turning toward tradition, good, turning away bad. Like it has its moment. And as my teacher likes to say, like love is always on time. So you can't, you're never, it's never happening until it's ready. And so again, just to like keep kind of a soft hold on whatever the process is. And of course, sometimes people need like little touches along the way, like as soft as a nap, as soft as a nap, to be able to have someone realize like what I need is rest and I need revitalization. I need deep community connection. I want to be uh, I want to be in touch with wisdom. Right? All of these things can be around a person, and who cares about all of these books? But suddenly something just like clicks and makes sense at that moment. And often, again, with people who are coming to us, psychedelics move that process faster than a person might expect. And they have questions, there's confusion, there's strong desires, like I have to be engaged. How do I go? And then we say, okay, well, let's first of all, let's slow down. And second of all, like now that you're here, let's see, like, where can we help you find yourself in this vast weave work of tradition of secular atheists and communist writers and Hasidic wild-eyed mystics, bubbies and grandmothers and cookbooks. Like, let's help you find your thing,
Mm.
um, and go slowly. Um, so again, meeting people where they're at, honoring the path, and finding those cool waters to help calm and refresh the soul.
Mm. Beautiful words, beautiful. Yeah, I love the emphasis on slow and refreshing love and care. And you also mentioned the books behind you, and I just want to ask a question,
Sure.
if it's okay, just to kind of move in a slightly new direction. And yeah, blessings and gratitude for the conversation just flowing in this way
Yeah.
so far. What's your opinion
Sure.
about psychedelics and being Jewish? Is it kosher? Like, are Jews allowed to use psychedelics? Is it okay to experience God in mystical states through psychedelics? Like, personally, what do you think? And what does the Torah say and other rabbis and traditions say? Like, what are some of the things you would say to someone that asks such a question?
Um, I mean, it's an important question. It's not always my orientation. Like, is this permissible or is this forbidden? My approach is usually about, like, oh, somebody did this. I have more of like a harm and risk reduction orientation. Like, well, now that you're here, what do we do? But if we're talking objectively, I think probably the most important aspect of the law, or um, the way in, I'm guided by the principle that's found in the book of Deuteronomy, where Moshe is recalling to the people about what happened at Mount Sinai, right? To people who were not there, their descendants, right? You were there. The voice was speaking out of the fire. You heard a voice. You didn't see anything. And remember, v'nishmartem ma'od et nafshotechem. Guard your very souls very well. And that one line becomes a whole orientation toward not putting oneself into too risky situations. So for me, that's harm and risk reduction. You know what you're getting into. You understand, like, your own mindset first, like, and understanding your intentions for wanting to go into this work. Why do I really want to do this? What's my purpose for this? You understand the subjective and objective effects of various medicines. You do good research about where you are hoping to do this and with whom, and you understand of course, the potential benefits, but also the risks, and the ongoing risks, and of course there are. Um, so that is really the question for me. Is it permissible? I mean, it might be permissible if you're taking really good care of your physical and soulful embodied self. But aside from that, I think it's about a personal choice and the desire for healing or personal growth. Um, just like we use alcohol in some ways for um, turning up the volume on spiritual presence. Certainly, in many aspects of our tradition, we use a plant medicine already for this. Um, could that then be the equivalent of um, a naturally occurring psychoactive substance as well, that has less toxic effects on a person's body? Um, so that's my kind of like starting point. What do you think about that answer?
I think that's a good start, Zach. Let's continue. Let's go deeper. Yeah. Yeah, I'm also not so interested in like permission or is it kosher. I feel like part of the discussion, and the reason I'm not so interested, I should guess preface that,
Yeah.
is because our experiencing of God when we are tripping,
Hmm.
I don't think it's in the mushroom or the DMT or the LSD or the ketamine.
Mm.
I don't think it's actually in that molecular structure. I don't know kind of exactly how it happens. I don't think the scientists know yet. You know, good luck to maps and compass pathways. I don't think they'll ever find it. Or like the CERN thing, Cerner in Europe are spinning under the earth, like between Switzerland and France. They're trying to split an atom, to find the God particle of, the Big Bang. It's like, okay, great. Yeah, you spend billions of euros doing that. And, you can find these great molecules and get IP over them, compass pathways. But ultimately, that's not where God is. That's not where the healing is. I feel like they are vehicles, like dance would be, like meditation would be, like fasting can be, like music, like just love and tenderness and holding space with each other can be as well, because they help us to connect with that part of us that we are born with and we die with, and that we all share as human beings with souls, every one of us, in this amazing universe. Like, there's nothing higher than being on planet Earth with a soul in a human body. I don't think there's anything higher in the entire universe. So just let's start from there. That's where God is. And so yeah, psychedelics can help us to connect with that, just like going for a little walk in the forest can as well. It's inside, and yeah, it helps just turn the volume up a wee bit.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'm so glad that you've shared your personal orientation and what's moving and what's alive for you. So helpful to have people who can speak authentically about themselves. I think I come from maybe a different orientation, in that I have had, since I was 15 years old, I had a really profound experience of the presence of divinity. I credit that one interaction. It was not through psychedelics. It was through, as my friend says, as Einstein I think says, spooky action at a distance. Just that moment of the lights turning on, and I was just a kid in the desert who was found, and I didn't even know I was lost. And that changed the whole trajectory of my life. I became observant and religious in that moment. Um, However, I have also, in the past, decade or so, begun to experience God's absence, the absence of divinity. And that has been a really profound opening in my own spiritual life, right? Nothingness, uh, the void, emptiness. And that's actually something that I'm going to talk about in this course, is what happens when we encounter the void. The void is something that comes up again and again for people, right? They feel lost, disoriented in the darkest space, of no connection, no color, no relationship. And it's something actually that Stanislav Grof wrote about in The Adventure of Self-Discovery. The supercosmic void is what he calls it. And the void is where we also find the potential for all things, right? The womb. It's not something that is just, it is empty, not for emptiness sake, but empty for the sake of potential. And we see so much of that in our mystical literature as well. And this is also where we get into paradoxical thinking, right? We learn from various teachings from Kabbalah, and for me personally, best articulated by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, that we live inside a paradox, that creation, before creation, existed only divine reality, right? Just undifferentiated consciousness. However, for some reason, some great mystery, that consciousness wanted to know something other than itself. And therefore, it chose, again, through some mystery, to create a space where it itself, undifferentiated conscious divine reality, whatever you want to call it, made a space where it could not exist in order that we could exist. So then you think about you and me, Jews, longing, yearning, oh, God, Hashem, whatever, we want you, we miss you, we need you. But yet we live in a place where divinity cannot be. And so then we enter into this paradox of the yearning for closeness and the reality of distance. And that is then kind of a chasm that we try to bridge, we long to bridge, we practice on bridging, and maybe never can. And that's in some ways a very psychedelic thought, is that two things can exist at the same time, that we still do some practice, some action, something grounding, and reach out for that mystery, knowing that it probably will never answer, but we make the call anyway. And that is kind of like the depth of my own spiritual practice right now, is calling out to the mystery of the nothing, capital N, and know that that is the something. The calling out is the something to the nothing. How can we get more Hasidic and psychedelic, David?
Love it. Wow. What are the words that are used in our tradition for nothing or nothingness?
The classic word for nothing or nothingness is Ayin,
Right.
Aleph, Yud, Nun, which also, by the way, if you like to switch letters around, that Aleph, Yud, and Nun, if you switch some letters around it, it can also spell Ani, which can mean self or I, my isness. So even in the word Ein or Ein, nothing, there also is the is.
Mm. And I remember reading something from Rav Kook a while back that, I don't know if he was saying that everybody should go through a process of atheism. Because he's famous for bringing together secular Israelis and, or there were Palestinian Jews at the time, and religious Palestinian Jews at the time before 1948, when the term Palestinian was used for Jews and Arabs. And he was saying that atheism is actually a really healthy place to go through, not necessarily as a long-term destination, but as a junction to go through, because otherwise we can live a life of certainty, of knowing who we are, or of just following the same old default mode network. I think that was Robin Carter Harris, actually, but just following in that, getting that groove on of who we think we are, or fitting in with the society, with the family, with our ancestors, with the heritage, without necessarily relinquishing that. And then from that nothingness, that Ayin, start to slowly, as you were saying, step by step, just bring that back in. And that's where that more intimate, sensual, healing aspect of this journey, I think, evolves once we can let go of knowing who we are and knowing what life is for and what it's all about, and just letting go of certainty in a sense. And I really feel that's an essential part of psychedelics. And I think we need to warn people, like, are you ready to have epistemological shock and a rupturing of your sense of self and meaning and reality, and not really know what might come up, and what
requires a lot
you
of
might need to
safety.
do afterwards. Yeah.
Requires so much safety. It requires a place to a good place to land. It requires a good cup of tea and a bowl of soup, warm blanket. We're talking about like really out there things, really profound ideas, and to know like that might, that's not always the goal, but certainly it can come up now and again. And for me, I as a person of faith, I also live in a world of doubt. So even one of the great Hasidic thinker, he calls this world, this level of reality, not the tree of life, or not the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but he calls it, this world is Ilana Desfeka, that this is the tree of doubt. That while we are in that, we are outside of that undifferentiated realm of divine unity or cosmic consciousness or whatever, we don't really know what's going on. And there is kind of that ontological or existential humility, which, Terence McKenna talks about, like, all throughout Food of the Gods, by the way, like specifically through the shamanic process and work with plant medicines, is that we just come to understand how little we know. And still, nevertheless, we walk with faith that our actions have real consequences. And for him, he thinks like that's the only way that he thinks that our current capitalist culture will not destroy itself is by coming to some degree of doubt and not certainty about our role in the planetary structure.
Mm.
And so for me, when I say that I'm a person of faith, my faith is that I know nothing. My faith is that I know nothing, and whenever I think that I do know something, I can back off on that a little bit. Like I know something about my daughter, right? I know that this is how this relationship goes, or I know this about myself. I'm not good at something. I get to be able to step back and say, is that really true? Is there potential for growth here? Can I come at this with new eyes? We just finished Yom Kippur, right? This idea that we can start over again, that our actions have consequences, and that we have the opportunity to start over afresh, over and over and over. And so hopefully, good psychedelic work can do that in a loving, safe, and supported environment, where even when people start to touch that mystery, they can come home to a place that is ultimately nourishing.
Amen. Beautiful. Thank you, Zach.
Amen. Yeah, thank you.
And just as a small reflection, hearing what you're sharing there, Zach, it's talking about destiny, not necessarily being a destination. It's not about getting to a certain place that has fixed meaning or ascending or aspiring to, a certain outcome measure. It's really being in a place of openness and of open to uncertainty and not having a sense of control or ownership, and just being truly open to each other. And in our 12-month course Vital, we just had a lecture today around space holding, like a collective container.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important part of that is that ability just simply to tune in and to be open and not to think, not to intervene, just to literally just tune in, witness, and hold space by kind of having that space of awareness. Because we're towards the tail end here.
Yeah.
I hope I got you for an hour. I think you're good with that, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to ask you, do you have any kind of things that resonate for you, teachings, words of wisdom, questions that you might give to people, or guidance that you give to people? Hey, I'm going to have my first experience with ayahuasca, or I've just had my first ketamine experience and I'm struggling with it. Any things for a particularly Jewish person or a person of faith? It's still hard for me just to say as a Jewish person, just because I want to make it universal and collective, and
Yeah, of course.
I just don't want to own it as like B2 Juju, but yeah, that you might give to someone, like words that just to help them kind of savor it. And what's the word when you put like fish in a sauce and it takes the flavor of the sauce? What's that word?
Are we talking about in Hebrew? What are we talking about?
No, in English. Just when you're making fish and it's the fish gets the flavor of the sauce in there. Marinated.
Marinated. Oh, you're just using because you're vegetarian.
Pescatarian. Yeah. So
Pescatarian, right?
So like what? Yeah. Anything that words that you've found that help people to marinate in those questions, in that space of not knowing and then nothingness, and just being open, that really help people to do the rest themselves.
I mean, one word that I will continue to repeat to the people that I meet who, right, it feels often like there's a sense of urgency of figuring it out, urgency of making meaning, and urgency to address something. What I repeat to people, and you already alluded to it just when talking about your own story, Shabbos, Shabbos, Shabbos is either when someone comes out of the psychedelic space, make quiet, loving, nourishing space. You don't have to figure anything out so fast. Let it unfold. Of course, if you're in a very bad place and if you're completely dysregulated, that's a different kind of advice. But if you're in a good place and you're feeling regulated, but there's still some unfinished work to be done, make delightful food. Be around people who care about you. take a break from your screens. Go out and be with a beautiful setting and surrounding that doesn't demand too much of your senses. And that is an essence of Shabbat, right? That is an essence of a day of rest. And that integrative space, I think, without any goal other than of nurturing oneself, is going to be fundamental for, again, for a person to have to come back in peace. And so too with going into an experience. What's the rush? Of course, there are people who have diagnoses who are so desperate for help that they will, they must go into a ketamine clinic. They must go work with this underground mushroom facilitator. They must go to South America. Of course, there is urgency to heal. And that urgency might also cloud the eyes and the senses and the intuition against some potentially unsafe or unsavory settings and facilitators. Slow down, come to your senses, have Shabbos, feed yourself and nourish yourself, and really think about your intentions and do better research. So, that's just one thing at the tail end. There's a whole lot more to say, of course. But I think that it would be great to know that people knew that my psychedelic advice was Shabbat.
Beautiful. Yeah, and Shabbat, sacred time and place, is really trying to increase how often we experience that in our lives. And for me, yeah, nature's a massive part of being able to connect with the holiness around and put my bloody phone down. So I'm going to put my phone down in a few minutes, but before I do, thank you for this conversation. I really loved it, Rabbi Zach Kamenetz. It's we've just riffed, haven't we? And it's been a real pleasure. Thank you, brother.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, and really looking forward to being with this cohort of people. And if people are also interested in our work on Jewish psychedelic support, they can go to Shefa, SHEFA, FLOW, shefaflow.org, and find out more about what we're up to.
Yeah, and if you also want to find out about our course, Navigating Psychedelics, Jewish Informed Perspectives, you can go to the Shefa Flow. It's in the bio, top of the line. And find it there. The course starts October the 10th, and it's 9 weeks long. You get loads of free pre-recorded content, masterclass videos, and then each week we'll have a different teacher. And Zach is teaching week 5, Jewish Phenomenology of Psychedelics, and Madison Margoling's teaching week 2 about sacred time and space. Set and setting. So beautiful.
Thanks, and people can also feel free to DM me directly at Zach Kamenetz.
All right. So thank you, everybody. This has been an hour-long, beautiful, exploration. And if you are interested in finding out more, then we'd love to see you on our Jewish Informed Perspectives course. Thank you again, Zach, and looking forward to seeing you soon in real life.
Love you, David.
I love you, brother. God bless, man.
See you. You too.
Take care. Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.